Dr. Castleberry here, taking in student questions from column 3533, Public Relations, Advertising, and Brand Management. We are getting some excellent threshold questions. That means questions that exist at the forefront of our educational journey together in this course. And hopefully these responses are offering us an encouraged understanding of not only definitions and terms and meaning and informed input, but also we're getting insight on how to enhance our question writing, question asking processes as it relates to course readings. So let's take a look at some of our remaining entries that were submitted the end of week 1. I got a pair of questions from Veronica that I want to tackle. First one, how can an ad have the power to convince consumers to buy certain products? Well, it would be a combination of visual and or written and or spoken form of persuasion, right? It's persuasion. Aristotle had, and this has been paraphrased over millennia, really, a definition for studying rhetoric and understanding it. And that paraphrase definition is all the available means of persuasion. And certainly when we're talking about persuasion, we're talking about communication. What one individual or idea communicates to another individual or individuals for purposes of persuasion, moving them to A, B, C, right? Moving them to think differently, moving them to buy differently, moving them to spend or invest differently, to act, to think, to vote differently. All right. So it's about persuasion, and advertising comes at us in all these ways, right? All these forms. It comes at orally, right? We hear advertisements on radio or on television. We also see advertisements on television or on any digital devices, that kind of thing. But there are also print ads, right? So they can be written. Of course, traditional print media like newspapers, magazines, and so on. But we also have there are other print forms that perhaps we don't think of at first, like billboards. Okay, and now of course we've blurred that line, and we have many digital billboards out there, but traditional billboards, posters, and so on. This is all advertising. They have messages that they are mass communicating, right? It's coming from one source going to many eyes, right? Many individuals. And so it's all parts of persuasion. That's why it fits so well in the field of communication studies. And we benefit from being a communication program that's also invested in media studies. All right. And we're crossing over, and blurring lines at the same time. All right, next question. What companies have the most successful ads? That's open-ended question to which I would respond, successful companies. Successful companies have the most successful ads. Hey, the Super Bowl's coming up soon. Let's watch the Super Bowl. What's an example of a successful company? Probably a company that can afford to advertise on the Super Bowl, the most expensive place to advertise on earth every year. And it's going to be because it's watched by the largest audience collectively every year. And so let's check it out. We'll get some answers there, right? 3 hours, 4 hours worth of answers programmed in on Super Bowl Sunday. Next we have, I erased the name off here. Series of questions. Oh wait, is it Britain? I think so. From Ads, Fads, and Consumer Culture, Advertising's Impact on American Character and Society, Chapter 1. Thanks for the subheaders, by the way. Identifying each pair of questions so we understand where the questions are coming from. Excellent demonstration, right, of strong organization. Certainly something we'll encourage each of you to do. All right, question 1 asks from Chapter 1, what is the difference between success and reward as a way of marketing? my immediate follow-up was, which reading? Chapter 1, but what page? Or because what we want, anytime there's a word that could have multiple uses or understandings, context is important, right? So what is the context of the page with which inspiration of the question is drawn? So what is the difference between success and reward as a way of marketing? Is success not just a form of reward? Well, it is, but rewarding, think of as a kickback on the back end. Success is something sustained, right? If I think about success or successful people, it's ongoing. Think about, let's talk about the music industry for a minute. We've all heard that phrase, a one-hit wonder. And what is a one-hit wonder? Well, a one-hit wonder is an individual or band or group, musical act that had a hit, right? They topped the charts, or they got close. They had that one sort of earwig of a summer tune and that kind of thing. And it caught a moment. It caught a moment in time, and it left a mark on culture in some way. But they never quite saw that again. It's kind of like creative ideas. David Lynch is a filmmaker, surrealist filmmaker. Not everyone's cup of tea by far, but he loves to talk about ideas, and he compares ideas to magic, right? And you have to capture an idea, and ideas are out there. And this goes back to a question we fielded earlier in the session about timing. And timing can be everything sometimes. You can have a great idea, and the timing's bad for executing that idea, turning that idea into something, transforming it. Whereas you could, you hit it at the right time, and maybe it's a reward, right, to have gone through that process. But yeah, I wouldn't look at success and reward as entirely linked terms, if that makes sense. Question 2, do you consider advertising and marketing to be important parts of society? Okay, my answer to the way this question is worded is, do I consider advertising and marketing to be important parts of society? Doesn't matter. They just are, right? They, in the way our culture is structured, and we live in a capitalistic society, right? A sort of capitalist democracy. And so consumerism and the invisible hand of the free market play enormous roles, central roles in our culture. And it's just, it's part of the training, it's part of how it's executed, right? How we elect, choose to live. And so, I'd say that is the way it is. So they are important parts, and I can't be subjective and say they're not would be disingenuous and ill-informed on my part. Follow-up, do they add any inherent value? And looks like I abandoned this question altogether. And so we'd want to look at the term inherent. So we're saying, like, do they add do they provide almost a trait value? They certainly have a history, right? They play a role in our history now. And I think it's one of the reasons we often bring in popular culture as a learning device in the communication major. And it's because culture and commerce are so ingrained. All right. All of these areas, and media and mass media and technology, they're overlapping with one another now more than ever, and more than ever in human history. And so we can't ignore that. In fact, we're a cut above the rest by understanding and recognizing it. And the better we are at reading these patterns, more successful we can be as professional communicators, or as idea makers, as entrepreneurs, or wherever our journey is headed. All right. So I hope that makes sense for us. Pair of questions about chapter 8 of Ads, Fads, and Consumer Culture. I'll just jump in real quick. Do you think semiotics has any uses outside of analyzing print ads? Can this study of science be applied usefully anywhere else? And, this is nice. It feels like you baiting me, right? In a good way. First of all, let's define key terms. We've got new and old folks alike coming together in this course. We use this very rich term here, semiotics. What exactly is that? And we can search for definitions, but a lay understanding of semiotics, at least in the context of higher education, semiotics is the study of signs and symbols. And advertising is nothing if not a series of strategically organized signs and symbols communicating to us in a persuasive manner. All right? You follow me? And so semiotics, we're applying it in the context of advertising. But my goodness, semiotics precedes our modern, uses of advertising by a lot, even before it was, the term was coined, semiotics. It has had a rich history in critical thought in the analytical world. So can the study of science be applied useful anywhere else? Everywhere else, right? Maybe asking the wrong person. I'm a lot of bit biased here. Semiotics, entirely important field. I would go out on a limb and call it one of the most valuable areas of study we could encounter in all of the humanities, because signs and symbols are the raw ingredients with which we create and organize our world. Yes, I mean, just think about, first of all, let's look at smartphone technology. All right. So now we spend less time talking on the phone than ever. We spend more time texting. Okay. And what are texts? What are text messages? Well, I mean, we're taking signs and letters as signs and symbols, sending them to people. Right? We're communicating. That's not verbal communication. It's not quite written communication. It's mediated, mass mediated, computer mediated forms of communication. But it's semiotics. Then let's add another layer. Many of us love to communicate through code in the form of emojis. And what are emojis? Emojis are base symbols. All right. So we're using symbol systems to communicate all the time. And we're encoding, we're decoding, and more on that in a minute. But symbol systems are everywhere. And and that's how we learn to be organized creatures in the world, right? Think about young children and the blocks, right? The building blocks, or better yet, maybe the cube blocks with the holes cut into them. And one of those first skills we're working on is not just motor skills, touch and feel, but plugging, right? Put the square block in the square hole. Put the round circle in the round hole, triangles, and so on. So signs and symbols play an integral role in how humans shape reality. And what can I say? I mean, it's a crime that semiotics isn't part of core curriculum everywhere. Do you think that it's possible to overthink an ad? Sure. Is it possible for me to overthink an ad? Probably. Do you think all ads have hidden or deeper meanings? Oh, okay. So here's where I was going a minute ago. Stuart Hall's most famous essay, a brilliant critical theorist, and someone that kind of crossed several lines, an international scholar, right? But Stuart Hall, his great essay, sort of reprinted again and again, many times over, is simply titled "Encoding Decoding," coming out from an earlier conference paper presented at a prestigious juncture. But we access that essay in one of our earliest classes, and we'll take a look at it for a reason. Stuart Hall is helping explain the communication process that had been theorized about, how a sender sends a message to a receiver and the message travels along a channel, but there can be interference or noise that gets in the way, and there are different types of noise: internal, external, right? Physiological, psychological. And so there's, but we're communicating also verbally and non-verbally, and it's simultaneous. But we call the people that produce the entities that produce a message an encoder for purposes of that essay. and then those that receive and interpret that information, decoders. But we don't all decode the same. And that was one of those key foundational observations that a ton of people missed articulating that fine point. And he suggests that we have multiple points of decoding, right? We can, the intended, right, or what he calls the dominant hegemonic interpretation or reading of a text. Then there's the negotiated reading, where you're interpreting some of what's intended for you, but you may be kind of adding your own or filtering parts you don't agree with, and so on. And then he, thirdly, Hall suggests that there is an oppositional approach to decoding a message. And this is where we outright reject it, right? We reject it in favor of whatever else exists that's not the thing that was intended to be sent to us. There's a lot of oppositional readings of cable news texts, right, and some and things like that these days, if I do say so myself. So Stuart Hall's essay, a foundational tool, and something we do like to get into, introduce students to. I think it sheds a light on this topic. All right, final questions. In terms of integrative marketing, chapter 1, how much do you imagine that technological advances have changed marketing and advertising? I don't have to imagine. I see it. I see advances everywhere. I'm speaking to advances right now, right? In fact, I speak my own ads into existence. I think, therefore I am has been replaced with, I think, therefore it is advertised to me. Let's think about the conversations we're having in private, these thoughts out loud. And suddenly on your social media scrolls, you're getting ads for that very thing. It's no longer what we're clicking, encoding onto browser windows. We're speaking ideas into thin air. And out there, advertising is capturing those ideas, repackaging it and presenting it to us to say, here it is, buy me. Oh my goodness, we are all consumer gods. Or are we just titans? Interesting. Mere mortals without control in a world of chaos. Chapter 9, final questions. Is there still a point or benefit to newspaper advertising, or is it a dead medium? All right. This is a great frequent question, and I'm not gonna this is like a good scientist, I'm not going to classify it as a dead medium yet. Here's what I would absolutely say. It is more like on the endangered list category, and it's not coming off, meaning we're not seeing it go away entirely yet, but we know where we're headed, and it's not in the direction of print, right? It's not in the direction of traditional newspapers. Will they continue to exist in some form or fashion? Yes. It's going to be very small. It's going to be endangered, right, to the point of extinction. And sometimes an animal may still exist out there, but it is so small in number that they could go ahead and kind of pre-classify it as extinct, right? And all of this is heartbreaking and tragic. I wish, maybe I wish more, material things were on the endangered extinct list, and fewer animals, right? You follow me? All right, so final question. Let's see if we can end on a high note. If anyone is still advertising in newspapers, do you think it's because they are targeting, I assume like companies or brands or whatever, do you think it is because they are targeting a specific generation? Okay, possibly. Generation, yes, or better term to use in this context, demographic, all right? So if you're advertising in a newspaper, you should have an understanding that the demographic you're after is a demographic that's reading newspapers. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Great questions. All right. And plenty to learn from, right? And we'll continue to do that. Look forward to tackling more questions as we get through into the coming weeks and coming mass mediums. I'll be excited to see what you all come up with. Thank you for listening.